Hello and welcome to Bishop Asbury Cottage. This is a tiny little museum with quite a big story to tell. We're just a few miles out of the centre of West Bromwich, and you can hear the really busy road outside, which has expanded over the years, that goes between West Bromwich and Walsall. And we're also about 5 miles away from the centre of Birmingham, for those of you that don't know the local area. But why is this little cottage now a museum, and who is Francis Asbury? Many people have never heard of him despite his big story, and that's because his story doesn't really lie here in the West Midlands. It lies far away in America. But this was his childhood home where he grew up. And I'm going to show you around it today because in 2020 we haven't been able to open the doors for our usual open days. So I'm going to take you around on a little tour. And in fact this works better because I can get more of you round filming it like this, because it's so small we can only get a handful of people in here at any one time. So the cottage started life early in the 1700s. And the Asburys moved in 1746 when Francis was a year old. And the cottages originally looked like this. They were labourers' cottages on the estate. Most of the land around here was owned by the Earls of Dartmouth that had a large house in Sandwell Valley called Sandwell Hall. So over the years, as the road expanded, the cottages were demolished. But people knew of Asbury's story, and even from the beginning, people had knocked on the door to be shown round where Asbury had grown up. So Asbury's cottage was saved. First of all, the L shape went, and eventually the rest of the cottages went just to leave Asbury's cottage. Now, there was a bit of controversy that the wrong cottage had been demolished, but research has suggested that this is definitely the right cottage where Asbury grew up. So, just a few years after they moved here, Asbury's only sister died. They were a small family. They only had 2 children, which was quite unusual for the 1700s. But Asbury's mother fell into a deep depression on the death of his sister. And it was this that got her interested in Methodism. At this time, Methodism was part of the Church of England. It was a movement within the Church of England. And it was quite appealing to working people because there were lots of lay preachers. So working people could have their say. They could speak up in church. And also it was quite equal. The communion was taken in the middle of the church, and no one doffed their caps to the bigwigs. In fact, the Earl of Dartmouth, who was himself a Methodist, which was quite unusual for the aristocracy and the gentry to be Methodists, but at the meetings he was simply known as Brother Dartmouth. I'm sure that the estate workers were expected to doff their cap outside of church, however. So Asbury's mother was very interested in Methodism, and in fact there were lots of Methodist meetings in this very room. And also the Asburys would walk miles and miles to hear preachers, which were normally in fields or in barns or in houses. So Methodism wasn't just about being in church, it was also about reading the Bible, and it was about listening to preachers. So that actually happened in this room. Asbury didn't have a huge epiphany. There was no road to Damascus moment for him. He actually slowly got more and more interested as time went on. He hadn't been very good at school, he didn't like it, but he did enjoy reading, and later in life he counts that he could read the Bible by the time he was 6. But he did go to work when he was 13 in local forges, and he did enjoy this very much. So he did really enjoy his work, and I'm sure that the hard work he endured in the forges would stand him in good stead for his life in America. Now, this time in the mid to later 1700s, of course, this is the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, and of course the Midlands was key to a lot of the movements in the Industrial Revolution. So we're right on the cusp of things as things are changing here at this time. So Francis begins to be a lay preacher, and he preaches first in the Midlands and then up and down the country. And eventually he gives up his work in the forge to go and become a preacher full time. Just going to move to the next room while we do this. You can see how small the cottage is. We've got the back door here, some stairs, a little bit of a cellar there, and a back room here, which may well have just been a storeroom. We don't know how the house was used originally. It's a bit of a strange shaped room. Then at this time, John Wesley, who was the leader of the Methodist movement, asked for volunteers to go to America. Francis answered Wesley's call of people to go to America and preach to the Americans and spread the Methodist word. And in 1771, Francis went to America. He told his mother he would be back by the time he was 30. This is a letter that was written by Francis Asbury to Thomas Coke, who was a colleague in America. It was Thomas Coke as well as Asbury who were eventually made superintendents. This later became bishop. Now, if you have any knowledge of the English Methodist Church, there aren't any bishops, and Wesley was absolutely horrified that Asbury had taken the title of bishops and said, "How can you suffer yourself to be called bishop?" It was really at this point that the English and the American Methodist movement started to part ways and to do its own thing. But of course, the nail in the coffin was the American War of Independence that came late in the 1770s. Wesley declared for England's rights over the Americans, and Asbury was on the American side. Although he was fined for his Methodist beliefs and occasionally imprisoned, it was soon realised that he was actually on the side of the Americans and allowed to stay. I'm going to move away from Asbury's letter now, and I'm going to take you up the stairs, up these tiny stairs. So there's a back door here. You can see that we're in quite a residential area. There's lots of just ordinary houses all the way around us. There's a little display here about some of the people that lived in the cottage in later times, and people would come and knock on the door and ask if they could have a look round. You can see there's a American visitor there. American visitors then and now were quite prolific, particularly Methodists, obviously, who were interested in Asbury's story and seeing where he'd grown up. So you can see some of the people living here at the time. It was quite a basic house by that point, which is why eventually people were moved out. And these are some of the things we've got on the table associated with the people that had lived in the house since Asbury. as obviously the Asburys only lived here for a short amount of time in the house's story. So here's the larger bedroom, and you can see very simple furniture. This chair is quite a fine piece. I'm sure the Asburys wouldn't have been able to afford something as nice as that. They would have had something much more simple like this to live in. Probably bare floorboards as well. And there's only 2 rooms up here, but it isn't uncommon. Think the Asburys only had 1 child once Francis's sister died. Many families had perhaps 10 children or multiple generations. So a house like this normally would have had quite a lot of occupants in it. So for the Asburys it might have seemed quite comfortable. Maybe not for many other working families. Although as a working person's cottage, it's quite a nice one. I'm sure they didn't have the electric storage heaters in the 1750s. This room may well have been Francis's bedroom. We don't really know, but as there is only 2 rooms upstairs, and they only had the 1 child, Francis, by this point, it's likely that this was Francis's bedroom. So let's head back downstairs. Mind your head as you go. Very important. We have to tell visitors, particularly the tall ones, but even the fairly averagely height ones it can get you. And we're back down into the main room. So that's the end of the tour of this tiny little cottage. Do go and read our blog and watch our video of Francis telling his own story and find out a little bit more about the fascinating life that Francis led. He travelled all over America. He travelled for over 270,000 miles. He never owned a house. He slept in people's barns and ditches, and occasionally their spare bedroom, so that he could preach all over the country. It did take its toll on his health, but he was quite determined to spread the Methodist word.